Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Uncut. My name is Billy, or BK23 on Instagram, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the fundamentals of smoking a cigar. So a lot of the time, a novice cigar smoker starting anything new or showing an interest in cigars might be a little bit nervous to go sit at their local cigar bar, chat with the guys, and kind of feel a little bit out of place, not knowing the etiquette, not knowing how to properly cut a cigar, not really knowing much about the process in general. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I will say this will be kind of a fundamental video. We're going to talk about types of cuts, how to properly toast and light your cigar. We're going to talk about touching up your cigar. We'll talk a little bit about ashing and then even putting out your cigar. If it's commonplace for most, or you've got some suggestions or ideas on etiquette, please be sure to leave a comment below. My goal is really to be a resource for you guys, and if there's things that we can talk about to help you feel more comfortable in cigar settings, or just more knowledgeable in general about the process, it's kind of what I'm here for. So first off, what we'll talk about are the three traditional types of cigar cutters. First and foremost, and the one that you'll see the most common, is definitely the guillotine. Guillotine cuts, typically cheaper cigar cutters that they hand out to you, or just your standard one-side guillotine or double-sided guillotine cut. This tends to be my preferred method of cutting. I do like a more medium-bodied cigar. When you cut this just at or below the triple cap, there's a couple of tricks. One being setting this down on the table, opening it up, putting your cigar on top, and with the cigar resting on the table, cut it. It usually allows for a cut right at the triple cap. The benefit of a guillotine is that, one, it opens the cigar up a little bit. You do get a little bit more of a full plume of smoke that separates and dissipates in your mouth. If the cigar is somewhat tightly wrapped, this kind of can help alleviate that, although they're all are tools like the perfect draw tool that allow you to take out some of that tightly wrapped tobacco and save the cigar. This to me is probably the most readily available cutter as well, although you can go to Calibri and many other sites and pick up whether it be a guillotine, a V-cut, or a punch. So as I mentioned, guillotine is the second type of cutter. Definitely one of my favorite cutters. Calibri really did a great job with this. This one happens to be two-sided. There's the guillotine on the back and the V-cut on the front. They call it a V-cut specifically because the blade is shaped like a V. One of the benefits to the V-cut is typically it tends to be a more crisp, precise cut. It also doesn't leave much of the excess tobacco that you're going to be spitting out of your mouth or picking out of your teeth in an awkward conversation with the guy next to you who just frankly didn't bother to tell you that, hey, you got a little piece of tobacco in your mouth. Lastly is the punch. I am personally not a huge fan of the punch. The thing about the V-cut is that it does allow for a little bit more of a concentrated smoke to enter into your mouth. You may get a little bit of the tongue bite with the V-cut, but it still for the most part has a pretty good amount of airflow and a cleaner cut than possibly the guillotine. The punch, however, definitely gives you a pretty tremendous amount of tongue bite, in that once you punch that cigar, the little 3 or 4 millimeter diameter hole concentrates that smoke directly into one point of your tongue, and sometimes comes across as bitter. That's where you get that tongue bite that I mentioned earlier, where you kind of go and you feel like you might have a little sore spot on your tongue from that concentrated hot smoke hitting it. As you get down to the nub of the cigar with a punch as well, you definitely start to get a little bit more of that dark black cherry kind of bitter sour taste on your tongue as well. All personal preference. There are many other ways to cut a cigar. You'll see people kind of form over function, in my opinion, with a pyramid, cutting the pyramid at an angle, or most recently the crown cut. Again, good looking cut, but you might as well just guillotine at that point. It's allowing the same amount of airflow through the cigar and the same amount of smoke into your mouth, which is ideally what the whole point of deciding or determining what specific cut you like. I will say that on occasion, I'll take the same cigar and I'll smoke one with a guillotine. An hour or so later, I'll smoke the exact same cigar with a V-cut, because you do pick up certain subtle nuances based on the style of the cut that you might not have picked up with the other, which I certainly enjoy. So once you've cut your cigar, make sure that you've stayed under that triple cap just at the first layer, which I'll show you some pictures of as well. Then you should be ready to light. So a lot of people say, you should toast your cigar. And you'll hear that and kind of go, oh, I'm not sure what that means. Really what that means is you take your butane lighter or a cedar match, you turn your cigar at a 45-degree angle, and you very carefully and very evenly try to ignite the outer tobacco of the wrapper and the binder evenly. You almost want to leave a halo around the tip of the cigar. Once you've seen that you've lit evenly around the perimeter of the cigar, then you can rotate horizontally and continue to toast just with the tip of the flame touching and igniting that outer tobacco. Again, that allows for a more even burn. You may have heard the term canoeing, or where the cigar will burn unevenly. It also helps to alleviate constantly having to relight your cigar or touch up your cigar because of an uneven burn. So I definitely suggest you take your time to properly toast your cigar. In regards to etiquette, as we move on in the conversation, the bands kind of come up as a topic of conversation often. There's two sides to the people that leave their band on, potentially igniting some conversation with somebody sitting next to you if they're smoking a cigar, and half the fun in smoking cigars is enjoying the conversation with the people around you doing the same. Leaving the band on can ignite the conversation. It could open up the conversation towards, oh, never had a Cuban before, what do you think about them? Are they better? Are they worse? Are they worth the money? There's also the side of the population that thinks it's, and I think this is more of a European feature, which I appreciate, a little bit pompous to leave on your cigar wrapper. I think the idea is to kind of have it be an equalizer of men. You sit down at a table, you could be worth 100 million, he could be worth, $100. You take that wrapper off, and it just becomes a great conversation about a passion that you both share, being a cigar. I tend to typically just leave my band on. I do like the aesthetics of the band for some reason. It just almost gives you a great idea of where to hold the cigar. I like the conversation about what you're smoking. You can typically tell by the vitola, especially in the Cuban community, based on the size, maybe a general idea of what it is. But again, as a novice or an intermediate, you might even go, oh, I like the shape and size of that cigar. I can see the band. I don't have to necessarily go, hey, I've never done this before. What are you smoking? I'm curious. So all personal preference. So once you've cut it, once you've toasted it, decided whether or not you're going to leave the band off or on, you begin to smoke the cigar and you accumulate an ash. There is, in my opinion, a proper way to ash your cigar. A lot of the time on Instagram and some of these other pages, you'll see people who, have a 4-inch, 5-inch ash on their cigar. Is it cool? They seem to think so. Some people really enjoy it. It's kind of a, internal competition to see how much of an ash you can get. Murphy's Law dictates that there is a 104% chance that ash is going to absolutely land in your lap, all over your pants, onto your shoes, and on your floor. So for me, once the ash gets to about an inch, maybe even less, quarter of an inch, half inch, whatever your preference, at the edge of your ashtray, don't break the ash off. Gently touch the ashtray to the ash and roll your cigar. This will allow you to have the ash fall off, allow the cigar to remain lit, and again, continue to make sure that you have an even burn on your cigar. If you find that your cigar is constantly going out, it's very soft to the touch, it probably is more of a humidification issue than anything else. As I've mentioned in a couple of previous videos, I prefer 65 and 65 relative humidity and temperature. That allows for the best burn, the cigar feels firm, I don't have to constantly relight, and it makes it that much more enjoyable. Depending upon how far down you smoke the cigar, whether it be to what they call the nub, where you can kind of just barely start to feel the heat on your fingers, or some guys like to go even further than that. The proper etiquette, in my opinion, is to just set the cigar down in the ashtray and let it go out. You'll see that a lot of guys will, whether there's a couple inches left or to the nub, they'll cram it down and move it around and kind of smudge the ash. That actually lets off a pretty unpleasant odor. So I would certainly say that if you're around people, don't worry, the cigar is gonna burn out in just a couple of minutes. If it's out on a windy day, you're outside, you don't want it rolling off onto, your outdoor carpet, exception to the rule. But if you're in an environment where you're indoors especially, just set it in the ashtray and let the cigar go out. So with that said, I'm going to show you guys a couple of pictures up close of the proper way to toast a cigar. I'm going to show you a couple pictures of a punch, of a guillotine, and of a V-cut. Ideally, again, cigars are something to enjoy by yourself. Great way to have an hour alone and enjoy something that's paired well with your favorite cocktail, your favorite wine, in my case, port, coffee, and whiskey, or over great conversation. All of these things hopefully allow you the knowledge and understanding of the process to go sit confidently in a cigar bar, strike up a conversation with the guy next to you, talk to him about what you like, find out what he likes, maybe even pick up some additional pointers. It's all about the experience. With that said, I appreciate you guys watching. If there's any additional cigar etiquette tips that you can think of, please feel free to leave a comment in the box below. Also, make sure you subscribe and follow me on Instagram at BK23. I appreciate you guys. Have a good day.